Well, hello and welcome to Race, Film, and Society. I believe there are no newcomers in the class, so you all know me. I am Professor Joseph Tribble, and it's good to be here with you all for this summer session. Today, not going to be in here for really long, but do want to kind of outline the class as well as give a short lecture to kind of illuminate and kind of set a frame for this class. So I'm going to talk through at least a portion of the syllabus, and then I'll get into the lecture. As you can see, I'm in my garage. This is the quietest place in my house. I have three younger children. Actually, today is my oldest daughter's birthday. She turned the big 10, so we're excited. We've been partying through Zoom and other avenues. My sister came over and we danced and ate cake and all that good stuff. So we had a good time. So I hope that you all had a good time. Hope you had a good 4th of July and that you're staying safe, in particular through this social unrest. Those of you who are activist type, please mask up when you go out to these protests and gatherings, because this COVID is nothing to play with, particularly if you have any pre-existing conditions. And then obviously racial unrest due to police brutality, which is something that as a people we have been dealing with for an extremely long period of time as African Americans. As long as we've been quote unquote free, we've been dealing with harassment by police and other kinds of law enforcement agencies and or persons who think they are law enforcement agents. Such and the like. And for that reason, obviously, this class is so very appropriate for this moment in terms of talking about race, film, and society, right? This is a tripartite kind of a piece, not just film, not just race, not just society, but all three of those dynamics in one, and what we hope to do in the course of this class. And so just a few little preliminaries. I always like to go through the syllabus so that if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. If you have any questions about the syllabus, about the class, please email me. You can get into contact with me at jtribble at abcnash.edu, as well as through Canvas, although ABC Nash is probably better to get in contact with me because of accessibility and ease. Although I will be in Canvas quite often, I don't, even if I'm in there daily, I don't always check the messages in there. So please, by all means, if you have any issues, any questions, anything that you need to talk to me about, please do that, and then we can, make arrangements. If there's something that we need to discuss either in person or over the phone, we can make arrangements to make that happen. So once again, the name of this class is Race, Film, and Society for this summer session 2020. And also in terms of Canvas, you'll see this nice little helpline number that's on the syllabus, 615-647-8475. If you're having any issues with Canvas, in terms of posting and or putting in assignments and those kinds of things, you can call me, or rather you can email me. But truthfully, your fastest response and recourse is going to be to reach out to Canvas. One, they know the system way better than I do, and then number two, one of the things that I will do, particularly if it's around the issue is surrounding an assignment, is I may reach out to Canvas to see if you have contacted them. If you're saying, I couldn't post it and this, that, and the other, I very well may just, give Canvas a call and say, hey, did so-and-so contact you on such and such date about such and such issue? And if they tell me no, then, that doesn't necessarily help in terms of whether or not there maybe was something wrong on Canvas's end, and or maybe it could just be a user error, or your internet is spotty, or any number of things can cause things not to post and attach correctly. So by all means, please make sure that you reach out to them. There are a fair amount of films and videos that you will need to watch for this class. I hope all of our, you get something from all of them. Some of them, there are links to them on YouTube. Others, primarily through now through Amazon Prime. A lot of those, I know a lot of us make use of streaming apps. I know I do. Amazon Prime, Hulu, Netflix, such and the like. Many of these films can be found in there. Also, don't sleep on Canopy, which is a platform that the college uses, and you can gain access to that if you will reach out to Mr. Spinelli. They have a bunch of stuff in there. There's one film I know in particular that's in there, Daughters of the Dust, and I would not be surprised if there are other films that are on the list that are in there. I say all that to say that your ability, I lay out what films we're supposed to watch, films and videos, because some of them are not films, some of them are documentaries. I line them out. But it's your responsibility, in the same way that if we had a textbook, it would be your responsibility to purchase the textbook and or find a way to gain access to the textbook. It's your responsibility to gain access to the films. In a real sense, these are your textbooks for this class. There will be readings. There are already readings that are posted. I'm about to say in website that are posted in Canvas. Look, you've been working for something for 5 or 6 years. That's just kind of programmed in your mind. But they're posted there in Canvas now for this first week. Stuff is up there. So please make sure that you go in there and take a look at it. I believe the first movie type that we'll watch is Who's Black in America, or actually, is that it? Who's Black in America? It's a documentary by Soledad O'Brien, and just kind of exploring the notion, right? The notion of race. Where does this notion of race, if you will, where does it come from, and the like? And there are so many great films that are in here, and I hope that you get a chance to watch all of them. You should watch all of them. To Who is Black in Latin America, we'll spend some time, because as we talk about race, one of the things that we'll discover is that the idea of race is not just an American phenomenon, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. And in particular, the ways in which Black bodies and minds and souls are defined in other societies, in the ways in which that ultimately kind of comes together and impacts us here in America. And so it's interesting to kind of do a cross-sectional study to see the ways in which those things, those ideas are taken up in other societies, with people who may, right, in Brazil, they speak Portuguese as well as other languages, who speak different languages. But if we were to look at them and not speak, we probably wouldn't notice a whole lot of difference. And so, and the like, and down to, kind of hood classics, Boys in the Hood, right, Blaxploitation, Shaft, Jungle Fever, another classic by Spike Lee, Dark Girls, a documentary exploring the notion of race and colorism, right? That's a particular dynamic within, right, the racial structure. Good Hair, right? What do we think about our hair? To also, Lord have mercy, to other films like Birth of a Nation, which is certainly about race, and we'll get more deeply into that, and then a century of Black cinema, so that we know kind of where, and even as now, right, we're in 2020, with Black films, Black TV coming out, kind of the history behind it, not kind of, but the history behind it, and even a film called Cabin in the Sky that takes us back, was made back in the 40s. Excellent film. Please make sure that you look at it. And so the course description is such. This course explores the concept of race as a historical and contemporary social construct through film and various writings. Attention will be paid to the historical beginnings and building of race and racial divides as social identifications, and how the performance of race affects the perception of racial groups. This course will allow the student to analyze and critically engage popular communicative mediums, bridging the student's thought world, lived experiences, and viewed performances surrounding race, particular but not exclusive to an African American cognizance. So there's a few things that I hope that you take away from this course. One is to begin to trace the historical formation of race, then also to define race, to determine competing and complementary ideas of race, its performance and its effects, and then to identify racial ideologies, archetypes, and tropes in film, and then to develop a working idea of race on film. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of this that's in the syllabus. I leave that to you to read at your own discretion, but I do want to say a few things about a few things that are in the syllabus, if you will. One, forum post or discussions rather. Please make sure that you are engaging in those, with those. I just posted a discussion earlier today, July the 7th, and it will be due on this Friday, which I believe is July the 10th. So make sure that you log into Canvas and engage in those conversations, which are so critical, not only to your learning, but also to your grade, right? They are graded. And I am, in there, and hopefully, we'll be in there and engaging with y'all, conversing with you all, to help to contribute and to, in some way, mold our conversation in ways that are most productive. So you are responsible, right, for making an initial post and then responding to two of your classmates, their post, asking them a question with something, asking a question or making a statement in some kind of substantive way. So, not just saying, oh, good job, or man, that was wonderful, okay, good job, but, why? What evaluation, what analytical thought what critical thought can you bring to the conversation? So that's what we're looking for in those. I think you guys are familiar. I think you guys are going to knock that out of the park. Then you guys have a tech savvy reflection paper, and it's a really cool paper. From time to time, I do these things with these papers, and people initially may have some difficulty with that. I understand that. You haven't done a paper like this before, right? In which what I'm asking you to do is to take your readings, to take these films, to take these lectures, and to put them all in there together, and to do some kind of critical analytical work, right? And that's difficult, right? For one, you're not used to looking at films, movies, such and the like, in the way in which that you're going to be looking at this. One of my hopes is that after this class, and one of the things that I don't consider, certainly not a critique, but I guess what the word is I'm looking for, adulation that I've received for this course in the past, is that people have said, man, I don't look at movies in the same way. And that's kind of the hope, right? So that even as one is able to enjoy something, that critical mind that engages things never quite gets turned off, and that even as you enjoy something, you go to do something for enjoyment purposes, you're still able to glean and distill the kinds of things that help to contribute to the conversation in the world in a way in which that is positive, and also in a way that helps to press the envelope to move yourself forward, but then also to move us forward as a people. So the tech savvy reflection papers, you'll have 3 of them. They are due on they're due every week, right? So you'll have 3 of them, and then lastly you'll have a final project. The final project is a vlog, right? A blog, a video blog. And my suggestion is that you get started with that early. Why? You want to be able to do a good job with it. And, particularly now with things being the way they are, campus not being open in the same way, you may not have access to some of the same kind of resources that you would have if campus was open in the same way that it has traditionally been open in the summertime. And so you want to make sure that you are looking at that. very closely in getting started with that, so that you're editing, and if you need to do things over, whatever the case may be, that you can submit a good product at the end of the class. We're not going to write a paper, we're going to do this. So this is your paper, so you need to come with it. Bring your best. Okay, bring your best. All right, so that's the course in a nutshell. So this class, as most summer classes, will move fast, right? We are trying to get through a lot in a little bit of time. One way for you to think about it is that we are trying to get a 16-week course done in 4 weeks. Now, you think about that truncated schedule and everything that happens in the course of a 16-week long semester, and trying to get that into 4 weeks. So there's a lot that we're going to go through. There's a lot of reading. You're gonna have to move. You're gonna have to keep up. If you don't, then that's not gonna fare so well for you. And please know that through forums and as well as the papers, obviously we'll know whether or not you're reading and reading at at least a decent level and understanding the material. So please make sure that you're doing that. You will have something. I can guarantee you will have something to do every single day. So this is certainly not a snooze class, but you want to make sure that you are getting your stuff and getting it in well. So what you can kind of expect is each day to have a reading. Readings do range in terms of how long they are. Some are more difficult than others. Like right out the gate, some of the readings are a little bit difficult. Take your time with them, but they're really good. They're really profound. The reading that we had for yesterday was not that difficult, but very, very good in terms of talking about the shaping of Black America, the road not taken by Lerone Bennett, preeminent historian. So make sure that you are doing that and the like. So once again, just kind of reminder, if you have any questions, email me. And we'll get into it. We'll converse and we'll talk through email. So with that being said, we're going to kind of jump on in. We've gone through our class expectations. So I've kind of talked about this a little bit, but let's talk about it some more. So hopefully, right, by the end of this course, I've said you will be beginning to look at movies in a new light, right? So what is it that you're looking for in movies? Well, one of the things that you may want to think about, right, is the movie, or are the movies saying anything particular about Black people, right? In other words, is there a message? What are they saying about what and how Black folk do what Black folk do? Some of these movies that we're going to be watching, the majority of them are produced, written, and acted out by Blacks, but then there are others that are not, right, that are produced by others, right? And so produced by others, maybe written by others, that are acted out by others. And what is it that they are saying about Black folk? What are they saying about the culture of Black folk? What are they saying in terms of what we do, how we do, what our swag is, and where we go, how we move, how we talk, how we sing, how we smile? All these kinds of things are what go into making us who we are, right? How would you imagine the director or writer to be thinking about race? So what do you, is there a message, but then what do you think they think about race, right? Because it truly, right, art imitates life. And in its imitation, we are able to distill, in some sense, we never get the complete look at anyone's thought world, but in and through the art that people produce, the tangible things that we can either view with our eyes, hold in our hands, smell with our noses, hear with our ears, right? Talking about the five senses, we're able to gauge what other people think. This is what we do through words. This is what we do through movement. This is what we do as we attempt to communicate with other people. And so that's what film is. Film, right, is a kind of communication. So what are they saying? Or are they saying anything about race? What are they saying about Black folks? right? And then do you see any types, right? So in movies, right, there are certain, right, we know there are action movies, there are dramas, there's musicals, there's comedies, there's romantic comedies, right, love stories, such like. So we know there are different genres of music, but then if we break that down further, there are types of characters. So in particular, when we get into this, and we'll look at this when we look at Patricia Hill Collins, where she talks about stereotypes and archetypes. But are there any types that are present within the movie that you're watching, right? So is there someone that fulfills the mammy role? Is there someone that fulfills the big buck role? Is there someone, we'll talk more about what that means and what that looks like later, but just to kind of throw it out there, is there someone that has been, in a very real sense, typecast into a particular kind of role? All right, is what we're saying, right? Archetypes, stereotypes. Is this, right, is the film, is it serious or is it satire? Or is it serious satire, right? One of the films that we'll look at, and then one of the, it's not a film, but it's a television show titled The Boondocks, and there's an episode called the S Word. And The Boondocks, if you know, it's a satire, right? It's a satire, but then there are these moments of real truth that come through very loudly if you pay attention. Okay, so is this serious or satires? And so I want you to look at these movies with fresh and new insight. Okay, so what is this all about? What is this all about? Well, what we're talking about, race as a social construct. And I know you've heard these words thrown around before in terms of social construct. When we say a social construct, what that simply means is that this is something that has not been determined by nature. It has not been determined by biology. There is no real scientific merit to this thing that we're talking about, right? And so race is a social construct. What if I told you, and you've probably heard this before, that we share 99.8% of our DNA with other human beings. It's that last 0.02% that determines all the very things that we think about when we think about race, when we think about phenotype, right? Phenotype talking about our body structures, what we look like, what are our facial features, right? How large are your hands? How large are your feet? How big are your lips, right? How wide is your nose? How big are your ears? How dark is your skin? But 99.8% of our DNA, or actually I believe it's 99.98%, is the same of all human beings, right? So race, very clearly, just based on that, is a social construct, right? Biological and physical differences, yes, there are some biological, and yes, there are physical differences in races, but race is much more than physical features, right? Race is about the creation of meta-narratives that combine many ethnic peoples, right? Ethnicities, right? Race essentially takes various ethnic groups and it lumps them all into one, right? And we'll talk about this, right? The creation, right? Because what we're talking about is really for us, we're talking about the creation of white and black, right? Have you ever thought about the fact that before there were white people, there were English folk, there were French folk, there were Germans, there were Dutch, there were Spaniards, right? There were Belgium, and on and on and on. There were, the various Celtic tribes, right? The Saxons and all these different people, right? Before there were black, right? There was Yoruba, right? There were the Ashanti. There were those people who spoke the Ashanti, not Ashanti, excuse me, but the people who spoke Swahili, and people who spoke all these, and part of the Senegal, what became Senegal, and all these different kinds of people before they were black. All right. So what race does is it takes and it collapses the category of ethnicity, and it collapses it down into one larger category that's defined based on physical features, but much more. And that's really where if race was only about physical features, this wouldn't be a class. If race was only about physical features, the social unrest that has taken this nation by storm at this current moment would be a non-issue if it was only about physical features. The issue is that with those physical features come other meanings. And with those other meanings, we attach value. We attach value to lives. We attach value to culture. And we attach value to bodies as well as minds and spirits. Okay, and so this is what race is about, right? This is what race is about. All right, very, very shortly, very succinctly. I know it's a lot. We're gonna unpack it as the class goes along. As you do the readings, you're gonna get a clearer, more defined picture of what race is and how you can define race. This is why I asked the question in the discussion. What is race? I want to know what you think about it. What do you think race is? How do you define it? Right? Because where we begin is often going to help to determine where we end up. All right. And then let's talk for just a moment about this chapter by Lerone Bennett. So what Lerone Bennett posits in the chapter that I had you read, The Road Not Taken, is that race is constructed out of a decision to create an economic system of slavery. That race, right, as we think about now, we think of it as very kind of defined, it's set, it is what it is. But for early English settlers, and I'm using that language very particularly because they were English, right? In large measure, particularly when you talk about places like Virginia and Maryland and other places, these people are English. Okay, Georgia, North Carolina, they're English. Okay, but it doesn't happen all at once, right? It's in flux for a long period of time. It happened gradually over time through the passing of laws and gradual cultural acceptance of proposed racial divides, and then advantages that are gained by whites, right? So it's not until white folks, all white folks, not just the planter class, right? Because the planter class, those are the rich folk, they figure it out early and they jump on the bandwagon, and they're the ones that are pumping out the propaganda. But it's the other folks, it's the poor folks, it's the folks that are in the middle that have to get on the bandwagon. And it's not until they get on the bandwagon and begin to define themselves in terms of race as opposed to ethnicity that we begin to have a definition of white over and against blacks. Right? So Bennett, he proposes 4 stages in the development of the racial construct. All right. So one is in terms of the extension of black servants, right? So the first stage is in recognizing that that indentured servitude, although profitable, was not as profitable as it could be, right? And so the way in which this plays out in a racialized manner is that initially everybody has pretty much kind of equal terms. One of the what a pretty common term, right, to settle one's account is 7 years. That in order to get to America, in order to get to this new land, these new colonies, that one would have to serve his or her master for a period of 7 years, and then after that time of service, they'd be set free, and also many times given a parcel of land that they could work, and then they could, create a livelihood for themselves, and if they have a family, also their families. What ends up happening is that we see the extension of the terms for blacks, so that whites and blacks are both going into indentured servitude, but blacks' indentured servitude terms of service end up being much longer, right? So black servants are not only longer, but then eventually they become extended to life. So I bring you over, right? And instead of setting you free after a period of 7 years, I'll hold you for the rest of your life. All right. So that's the first stage. The second stage is then, now I will hold you in bondage for your entire life, is the addition of the category of heredity. Heredity. What does this mean, right? What that means is that not only do I hold you in bondage for your entire life, but your station in life as a bondsperson passes along to your child or children. All right. Virginia is the first to jump in on this in 1662. The Virginia Commonwealth, or the Virginia colony legislature, declares, whereas some doubts have arisen whether children got by an Englishman upon a Negro woman shall be slave or free, be it therefore enacted and declared by this present grand assembly that all children born in this country shall be held bond or free according to the condition of the mother. Okay, why is this important? This is important because what this signifies is that now, for one, women, in a very real sense, become more valuable. Black women become more valuable. Why? Because through the birthing of children is the production of slaves. Okay, so what we're seeing is the monetizing of bodies, the monetizing of lives, right? Race is very much tied to money, right? This is one of the things we must realize, particularly at this juncture, this point in time, as we look at all these things. We're talking, defund the police and criminal justice reform, and here in Nashville, CoreCivic and the Nashville criminal justice system have split ways. CoreCivic, thank God for that, will no longer, they're supposed to be phasing out from operating the detention center that is on Harding Place. Some of you may be familiar with that and visiting other people and the like. So race is tied to money, right? And I'm talking about CoreCivic in the intertwining of that, because then when we consider the ways in which blacks, not just black males, blacks, and also people of color more generally, brown people, yellow people, are convicted and held in these prisons and jails, particularly that are owned by private corporations at much higher rates than our white brothers and sisters, we begin to see the connections between race and money, between race and economics. And that the truth of the matter is that even as we say there is no race, right? There's only, green. That's not really accurate, right? Because part of what has made the green grow is the black and the brown and all of the various colors and races that make up this nation. Okay, and so this notion of heredity, this passing down, is racializing, right, bodies, but is also monetizing bodies. Okay. Then the third stage is then deciding who could be enslaved. Whether or not race would be defined solely on the basis of parentage, ancestry, and then also on the basis of religion and or culture, right? These are very real concerns, right? Particularly in the colonial period, right? There are questions as to whether or not Christians can enslave other Christians, right? So what